Thanks to everyone who is in the room, and in particular to our panelists. We will be on a first name basis, if that's fine with you, so that we can move quickly through the discussion. I would like to we have heard some fantastic, very brainy and interesting discussions on geopolitics. I would like to somehow try to translate this into the real life. And how does it implicate everyday operations? And each of my panelists, in a certain way, is in charge to do exactly this in their home countries. There is immense volatility. I think half of us spent the last night reading our phones or trying to figure out what is going on. There is a decisive paradigm change. But how do you really bring this massive thing into your everyday operation as in the ministry, in different advisory roles, and etc. And in order to give us a little bit of the taste of what we will discuss, I will first have one and the same question for everyone. I would be grateful if you can be super quick in your answer. It's really just through the table on, one sentence or two, so that we create a framework for the discussion, and then we will move on. So for decades, we were told that it's interdependence that will make us safe. Now, we, in order to be safe, need to build resilience to that interdependence. And it's quite a change. So how do you do that? What are the key elements of this shift? And how you build this while you walk? So how do you create resilience, growth, and competitiveness all at the same time? So I will start from that end, and we'll then have the next round of more longer questions before we open to the public.
Thank you, Romana. So, given events overnight, I don't think I need to convince anyone here that the old order has completely dissolved now. The point is that this was a long time coming, and so there is no going back. There's no point in trying to rebuild whatever was there. It's all broken. And as a citizen of an emerging power, let me say I also don't have any great nostalgia for the old system. So I have to now live in this world and build on this as it exists. So since this is about smart ports and resilience, let me say that let's take India, for example. In an environment where there are all these random conflicts, occasional pandemics, and so on, it's optionality that matters a great deal, because you don't know exactly what in the system is going to break down. Now, take India. India may look like it's not an island, but from an economic perspective, it's completely an island. You have on one side Pakistan, with whom we do not trade at all. And to our east, we have China, which we have a long border, and we do trade with them, but not with the bits with which we have a border. So effectively, India is as much an island nation as Great Britain or Japan. So if you think of resilience and optionality, a very important part of our resilience as an economy has got to be control over sea lanes and our maritime assets. In that context, let me show you what the problem is. Today, 95% of our trade of goods is carried by foreign ships. Now, you can imagine that is a serious threat to our national economic and economic security. So, not surprisingly, we are now beginning to think very seriously of not just our ports, but ship ownership, flagging, shipbuilding, things that we have historically not been paying a great deal of attention to. But in the last 24 months, you may have seen we have done a lot of things in simply building these sectors up.
If India is an island, also Europe is an island nowadays, because after the conflict with Ukraine, we have not land borders that are able to used for logistics system of supply chain. So all the industry in Europe have changed in very supply chain. And nowadays, each raw material, each product come from sea. And of course, we are a little bit different than India because the biggest fleet in the world are European, MSC, but also CGM and also Maersk and so on. But also all the ship are built in China or in other countries, not in Europe. Only cruiser system it's built in Europe, but carrier and ferries are the most part built outside Europe. So this is the first thing that for the resilience of our system, the first thing is shipbuilding. And also refitting, because nowadays we change also the fuel system of the shipping. So we have to refit all the ship in the next 20, 30 years to change engine, to change the system, to move the ship. And we need to increase this kind of capacity. The other things that we have, and I finish, we have all the infrastructure system in Europe. We need to invest in highway. We need to invest in railway, because the average in Italy, it's about 90 years the average of our railway. So it's really to invest a lot of billions euro. In Italy, we think to invest the next 10 years more than 200 billions euro. And so we must plan a new vision of European infrastructure.
Thanks a lot. So far, industry or industrial base and strategic infrastructure.
Thank you. Well, I think, first of all, in order to have resilience, we have to ensure maritime security. This is number one. Then, of course, we have to invest in infrastructure. We have to invest in new technologies, in cold ironing for our ports, in innovation, AI. So technology goes with that. Third, we need a capable workforce for the whole maritime section, for the whole maritime cluster, if I might say. And I think, last but not least, we have, in front of us, we have, as my colleague said, a major challenge, the challenge of the green transition and the decarbonization effort. So we have, we must, work together, adopting a level playing field in order to progress to this challenge.
Thanks a lot. Back to India.
Yeah, just looking at what happened last night, it's important to state that as things change so dramatically, you initially mentioned about interdependence. I think that's long gone. Now it's self-preservation. And starting from the United States, how policies have changed to de-risk everything, from sea lanes to supply chains, disruptions that are caused. And as we mentioned in India, for example, we import 83% of all our energy, right? So that's something that's non-negotiable. So national security translates to energy security and economic security. To do that for the long-term future, we have got to look inwards and look at nearshoring and friendshoring, how supply chains can be made not just in time, but just in case. Most of energy comes from some of the most unstable parts of the world. How do we think and make those long-term supply chains sustainable, relevant, and find alternatives? Transitions happening in technology, in green tech, fossil fuels are going to be replaced quite quickly. But as a large country, we have to look beyond what we can see today. Who knew 10 years ago we'll have these multiple conflicts all around the world? So as logistics change, technology changes, we have got to make sure that large countries like India have a lot of buffers as we move forward.
Well, as has been said, we have to start with the world as it is, and it's been said already: uncertainty, volatility, risks of fragmentations. That's the world we live in. When it comes to resilience, I think, and to keep it short, what matters for us, for Europe, for France in particular, is diversification, reduce strategic dependencies, and I think that since COVID, the mindset has completely changed in Europe in this respect. Second, work with trusted partners. A lot has been said about India, and this is something we've been investing in. And I think that other partners around the world with whom we share trusted relations are the ones to be worked with. I would insist on modernizing infrastructures, and as we're here in Marseille, I mean, looking beyond purely maritime aspects. It's all about digital connectivity, and we're investing into undersea cables. It's about capacities to store clean hydrogen, and decarbonation has been mentioned. All of this is absolutely central when it comes to modernizing infrastructures. Two last points: public-private cooperation, because none of this can be done by governments alone in the fiscal constraints we're facing. It needs fundamental involvement of companies, CMS CGM being a major one in this respect. And final point is the need, when we talk about connectivity corridors and the likes, to involve local communities. And I think as long as it delivers on jobs for local communities, then you can actually defend this logic of connectivity and embark population, because otherwise you have a risk of a disconnect.
Perfect. I'm going to read very quickly what I think are 9 key points that were mentioned. First is renewed industrial base. Second is strategic investment in strategic infrastructure. Third, security, national security, maritime security. Fourth, innovation, new technologies, skills, energy transition and energy abundance, if you wish, diversification, centrality of private sector, and finally, deliver to people, because this is what our job is all about. This is a very tall order, and it will require a huge amount of money. I will start with you, Sanjeev. How do you plan to do this in India? What is your take? Because you are sitting in a committee which has this umbrella view over things. How do you want to do it in a systemic way that can deliver, again, both competitiveness, growth, but also resilience?
So obviously the first order of resources comes internally. We're a big country, growing reasonably fast. We have an investment rate of something like 32% of GDP. So we are a high investment savings country. So the bulk of the resource comes internally generated from that. But it is true that we need a good top-up, and that has to come from foreign investment, whether foreign direct investment, portfolio investment, or any other kind of investment. And so that is why we look for partners. So when we are doing a free trade agreement with the European Union or US or UK, whoever we are pursuing them with, we do understand that this is a two-way relationship, by the way, in which investments will also, there's this mental image that all the investments flows from north to south. That is not entirely the case. We are also investing quite heavily in other countries for a variety of reasons. There are obviously rare earths and all kinds of things in which India is investing out. So this is a complicated system of resource transfers that have to be done. And these in some way are different from the way we used to think about the world, which was much more stable. We will now create, as I said, optionality is a very important part of how we think about diversification. Is just one part of it, but various kinds of options and being able to change those combinations quickly is important. And that's why trusted partners are absolutely critical, because those partners have to understand even when you have to do things which may be somewhat odd for that moment, they have to trust you that you are doing something that is not hurting their interests.
Excellent. So I bring trust to the list because it eventually gives you freedom to maneuver, which otherwise you would not have. I'm going to Europe, Eduardo. If you can help us understand how in Italy are you planning and working towards fulfilling all these needs?
Yes, for us, it's really important to have flexibility to the supply chain, especially to use Italy. Is the biggest country, European country that have all the cost in Mediterranean area. Mediterranean, it's only 1% of the water around the world, but it's 23% of the business traffic. And it's really important for us to increase the capacity of our system, increase the resilience, and to pay a lot of attention to the international connection Suez Channel and Gibraltar, but also the new channel that we can build up, building a railway in Turkey or in other parts of European Mediterranean area. For us, it's strategic to think that the new markets, especially India, but not only India, will be really important for European system of supply chain. And it's really important to collaborate with the other countries in Europe, especially the country in the Mediterranean area, because in this global system that it's really, in a strange situation, that it's not, there is not a real stability, we need to open new market for our industry. And we have a big know-how of infrastructure, of shipping building, of everything. So we want to make friendships with other countries to develop a system that will be a European system connect with other continents. Because European for 20 years we have lived like in a bubble. Nowadays we need also to have a partnership with other countries that can be complementary of our industrial system. And I think India, but also a lot of countries in Africa and other new countries that they grow in these years will be really important to have. So we are going to have a new strategy for connect not only our port system, that we have 16 ports of international importance in our country, different of other nations that a few ports, but we can be a really big gateway with France also for to enter all goods from the south of Europe. And for this reason, we need also to invest to TEN-T corridors and to connect also all the European countries by Alps, by tunnels and everything. Because in this way we can give more resilience of our logistics system, of the European logistics system. And so we are going to invest a lot of money on that, and also to develop new technology of digitalization, all the process, and to try with a Green Deal to increase our capacity, but not our emission. It's really a change.
Thanks a lot. Just a little short bonus question, if I may. Eduardo, instruments are key. Is there any concrete planning on the level of Italy as a state and also European Union, with which instruments and with what kind of funding this can be done? We are for those outside of Europe, we have just started negotiations on the next budget cycle, which for the European Union is a key document, and it will be very important that all of this is reflected in that.
Yeah, this is really important, because I think that Europe have to change the vision, because in the past the vision was a vision of North Sea and the vision of East Europe. Today we have a vision to Mediterranean area, because the Mediterranean area is the only area that can grow in the next 20 years more than the other areas. Perhaps this year we had the problem in the Red Sea. You know, the fleet from the navy from France, from Italy, they go there to maintain open that important channel of the Suez that is really strategical for all Mediterranean area. But anyway, in this situation, our traffic grow from more than 4% in Italian ports, because our capacity to can also use our ship to go in the other parts of worlds. Perhaps we put 114 ship around Africa that and we can contain the inflation rate, and nowadays we can produce the goods like if the Suez Channel will be completely open. So the problem is, of course, the security of our connection, also submarine cables and everything. The 80% of all world data go around under the sea. So we need to improve this kind of technology, design the security. But also we need to change the mentality of European to invest more on infrastructure. And this could be really the new era of our continent, because for us it's really important to develop really in a fast way our system, because the world is not waiting us.
No, it's not. Thanks a lot. And this is a perfect introduction to the next question, Stefanos. The centrality of the private sector. None of this can be done without fully utilizing the power, capabilities, and if you want, financial depth of the private sector. What, in your experience, in the experience of Greece, are best models of public-private cooperation? How do we make this most effective? How do we bring scale? And how do we make it move much faster so that Europe can finally catch up with the rest of the world?
Thank you, Romana. Well, I think the public-private sector cooperation, collaboration is essential. I also believe that private entities, they can very easily can run ports, big ports. And actually, this is something that we are doing in Greece. Our major ports right now run by private entities. And I give you an example, the Piraeus port, which is one of the biggest ports in Europe, right now is one of the most competitive ports in the area, in whole Europe, I might say. Up north, the port of Salonika, is also run by private entities, and year by year, double its figures. So the private sector, of course, in close cooperation with a state, can produce. They can upgrade the ports, they can introduce new technologies, and this is something that we can see in Greece. But I believe also that bilateral and multilateral schemes also works. For example, we have the electricity connection project, Greece, Cyprus, and Israel. We have the GREGI project for also electricity connection with Greece and Egypt. And of course, all this towards Europe. So if we want to look forward, we have to cooperate with the public and private sector. This is, I think, one way. only. And one last word about the financing. We can do nothing if there is no a finance scheme that we can base on. And thank God in European Union, we try hard to have these financing schemes for a variety of projects. For example, and this is my last point, in Greece right now, we have a major project to create green ferries for our islands. Green ferries means that they are not using fossil fuel, no fossil fuel, just green fuel. And this is funded half by the European Union and half by the private sector. So this is one good example that the collaboration between the state, the Europeans, and the private sector can work.
Thanks a lot, Tristan. I mean, this is very, very complex on its own, and becomes even more complex when you need and want to translate it into explaining and doing and implementing benefits at the local level and with the local networks. How do you do that? How do you, first of all, make sure that those benefits are there? And how do you explain what exactly is going on and what needs to be done in these volatile times that might at some point also demand some sacrifice or might demand some kind of risk that Europeans are not used to, different modes of reaction to what's going on. How do you do that?
Well, I think that for political leaders all around Europe, it presents a challenge, which is to better connect actually foreign policy and domestic impact. And I think that, when we're talking about trade wars, that translates into inflation, that translates into pressure on consumers. This is not abstract or disconnected from everyday's lives. When we're talking about resilience and industrial base, and you started with this point, the world that we've known of openness, interdependence that was depicted previously led to deindustrialization in parts of Europe, same in the US. And I think that's been a powerful driver of political dynamics all over Europe. And now, it's all about demonstrating that the whole discussion we're having on building resilience has to deliver on jobs for Europeans. And I think that this is the way you connect, this wider description of the world that we're facing with very concrete things that when we're talking about, for instance, a year of innovation between India and France next year. I mean, this is about a vibrant ecosystem of startups in France and in India. It's about engineers. It's about developing ecosystems that are thriving in sectors that will shape tomorrow's future. When it comes to semiconductors, when it comes to quantum, I mean, on all those issues, we have to be very concrete on the fact that those partnerships with trusted partners are about creating opportunities with partners and delivering on jobs within our countries. And the same when it comes to connectivity. And in Marseille, it's for central government and local authorities to demonstrate that everything we're talking about in terms of connectivity is creating jobs in the region. When we're talking about shipbuilding, this is about important job creation sources. So I think it's about discussing foreign policy in a way that is much more entrenched into local realities. This whole idea of foreign policy for the middle class that used to be developed a few years ago, I think was quite powerful in this idea of connecting strategic direction with what it entails for our population. And I think indeed, what you're saying, we'll have difficult choices. We have fiscal constraints. We're facing security threats. So we'll have to allocate resources to our strategic priorities. This will imply trade-offs that will be difficult. And unless as political leaders explain this interconnection, we won't get there. So it's extremely important that when we're discussing resilience and everything we're discussing here, we talk about jobs and impact for our citizens.
Thanks a lot. It will require a lot of leadership. And I will close our time before we open for questions with Sachin. How do you, the same question to you, how do you explain these things to your constituency? Because ultimately, without that support, you can't really implement most of the changes that are needed.
Romana, the hard fact is that all politics is local. Now, you can have foreign policy, you can have discussions and think tanks and scholars and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, as an active politician, I can tell you that you have got to be able to make sense to the people that you represent. Their best interest is your top priority. Now, foreign policy is where you want to be as a nation state, and diplomacy is how you get there. But that's not how you win votes. You win votes by protecting your citizens, making sure that their livelihoods are secure and better than they were of their parents. And as a policymaker, once you're elected, your job obviously is to contribute to the global order, to make sure your country's voice is heard and the wisdom and experience of a nation state is represented on the global table. But if I'm not able to provide jobs, like was being mentioned earlier, if I'm not able to keep inflation down, if I'm doing an FTA and I'm not fighting for 600 million farmers of my country, then I'm not doing my job. If I do a great FTA, I get applauded in Brussels and London, but my electorate is facing severe crisis for livelihoods, then I'm not doing a good job. So there is a tough act of balancing what is right, what is appropriate, what is moral, where moral compass leads you, and where politically you stand. Even in domestic politics, you have difference of opinion. But for things that are important to our national security or integrity, we stand together. But like you said, you can talk about nuanced policy making, foreign policy, digitization, decarbonization, de-risking, sea lanes, etc. But at the end of the day, every 5 years, you have got to go and win the mandate of the people who put you there. How do you do that? By genuinely believing in what's in the best interest of my people and my voters. That's the policy of the state. And sometimes voters don't understand what the implications will be 40 years later. So you have the Paris Agreement, you want to be carbon neutral, you want to decarbonize, but unless you're able to translate that narrative in a language that is palatable, acceptable, and then appreciated, I don't think it makes sense. And especially for our country like India, it's so large, with so many different languages and backgrounds and worldviews, it is difficult to translate what is right globally to make sense for our electorate. But I think all of us in Europe, I think, has finally trying to wake up to the new reality of the 21st century. And I think India will stand as a tall partner for all the endeavors that our European friends are looking to do.
Great, and this is a great ending of the discussion. I try to have this, bringing as many practical issues to the table as possible. And there is a lot of convergence, almost complete convergence, on problems and solutions, which leaves me with something that Ambassador Tallo yesterday said. What we are talking about here and during this conference is this Indo-Mediterranean space. And just like Indo-Pacific became a household term, I think we need to do everything to make Indo-Mediterranean something that is recognizable as a framework within which we are doing all of this. And I really hope that FTA will be finished, etc. But FTA is just one piece. There are so many other things that need to happen in this space, and none of them will happen without trust. So the work that we are all doing and these discussions, I think, are also greatly important for building understanding and trust in that sense. I will open, we don't have much time, but I will open for questions. If I understand well, we have a colleague from OECD in the yes, Karim, yes, all of this, and we didn't talk much about IMEC. Will be impossible. if there are no rules and regulations that would make it possible for cargo to get uploaded in India and unloaded in Europe without any interruption. How do we do that? We will need some help as well. Please.
Yes, thank you very much. I have a question. I'm Karim, I'm Deputy Director of Global Relations at the OECD, which probably could be responded by Eduardo or Stefanos, but that might interest other panelists. We are working at the OECD with the International Transport Forum on measuring the efficiency of transport corridors from across the world. So we have started to apply our approach to the Trans-Caspian corridor, and we are launching 2 projects with the Lobito corridor in Africa and the Bioceanic corridor in South America between Paraguay, Brazil, Argentina, and the ports of Chile. When we do these, we measure the efficiency of network industries, particularly transport, so road, rail, maritime freight, and intermodal transport, but we also look at the regulatory cooperation between neighboring countries, trade facilitation, logistics, custom facilitation. My question is the following. What importance do you attach to these softer aspects, which is the regulatory cooperation between countries participating in transport corridors?
Who wants to end?
I think what he's stating is that, look, we need to have the similar protocols across this entire band. And this is important, I'll tell you why. Because given how fluid the situations tend to be, you need to be able to very quickly switch from one pathway to another pathway in case they get blocked for any reason. It could be a war, but it could be any other, it could be an earthquake or some other thing. And you see, even when you're thinking of IMEC and these kinds of things, I think even there we are being too rigid. So let me give you a historical background. We have essentially between the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean world, basically 2 pathways for thousands of years. One is the Red Sea pathway, and the other is the Persian Gulf pathway. Today, the Red Sea pathway is entirely thought of in terms of the Suez. But in fact, historically, it was not the Suez, but Aqaba, Petra, Caesarion, and those Sidon. So that's actually another pathway. We have not been exploring this too much. So even in the Persian Gulf side, the historical route which was up towards Basra, up the Tigris, and across to Aleppo and those ports, or even to Byzantium. So even the pathways we are taking, I think we are ending up being way too linear in this. So if you want multiple pathways, you will basically, the only way that you can switch very quickly is to have what he's arguing for, is that everybody has basically the same format so that you can switch between different pathways very, very easily. It's not just about the hard infrastructure.
Thanks a lot. I will ask one of European colleagues to answer this question as well, because very often European Union has this logic of our norms are best norms, and it's cut and paste or nothing. Is this viable? Should we think more in terms of interoperability and finding some core overlap, but really being open for negotiating the margin, because this is what, from my experience, is one of the biggest issues when we deal with our partners on standards and standard setting.
Yes, it's important to be more flexibility, because nowadays we have to talk with people that are outside our continent. They have different rules, but also inside our continent. Nowadays, we have not the same rule in or Europe. So we must more, have a vision, a strategical vision, then to build up instruments that are really flexibility with the changement in the world. And nowadays, the problem that we had, it's problem with ruled with law, That's especially in the logistics system. It's one of the most difficult that foreign people that invest in our continent have. Different country, different law. In different area of the same country have different role or different administration issues. And this, it's really difficult to build international corridor in this way. The other things is the changement also, I told before, the changing of fuel for shipping will going in a world that have more fuel about shipping. So if you build up a corridor, you can in this corridor find one or two kind of fuel. And you need that all the ship can go with this fuel. And this is another problem that we have to have a global vision where the world is going, because the European can decide what kind of fuel can you have, because perhaps Japan use ammonia. Ammonia in Europe, it's really a problem. Perhaps in Italy, for our law, it's really a problem to use ammonia inside the ports. So we have to build a simple rule that can are in worldwide rule. And the other things that nowadays travel around the seas more easy than in past. So our border is not between Italy and France, but it's Italy and India, Italy and Brazil, France and North America. So we are really connected with all other worlds. And for this kind of things, we have to change our vision, not inside of Europe, also for rule and also for partnership with private sector. Because we need incredible amount investment for the next years in the infrastructure logistics system. And our states have not this kind of amount. We need to make a partnership with private sector.
Stefanos, yes, please.
Very quickly, you know, Greece is a maritime nation. We advocate a rules-based international order who has at its core international law. You know that, everybody knows that. So speaking about shipping, we have UNCLOS, the law of the sea. So this is the framework, the governance in the sea for the shipping sector, for the maritime sector. This is so an axiom. So the second point is that, yes, we have to explore new corridors. IMEC is a very important one. We aspire Greece, as my Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis said many times in the past, aspires that Greece be one of the main getaways of Europe to India, India to Europe. And therefore, we support all these initiatives that make IMEC stronger. And of course, we must all admit that the rules relating to the shipping sector are issued by the IMO. This is the framework that we all have to face. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. There was a question, and I think we can, steal 1 or 2 more minutes.
Thanks. I have one question, 2 questions actually. One is related to the Port of Piraeus, right? And it's the fact that today we are talking about a port that has become, I think, competitive, and you really said it, and it's the place that basically represents 10 to 15% of Chinese import into the European market. So we took actually big money for us. And at the same time, it's a port that, with the Chinese investment into the port, represent a number of vulnerabilities, right? Because if there was to be a crisis, by the Chinese nature, of the PLA, the COSCO ships could be used for military purposes. And this would be a place that could be potentially used suddenly and turned into a military facility. And then you have a second element related to the hybrid threat that it can represent, right? You imagine a case of conflict, and I think in the volatile world in which we are, imagining conflict and tension is fair. And could we think about a moment where basically there is a cyber attack and where the port is completely paralyzed and what it means for our trade? So what are your concrete thoughts on making a port being resilient in situations of tension and escalation? And this is related to a second question, which is actually in shipbuilding, you have the US-China tensions at the heart, right? The Americans today, they have clearly said that they can't afford having China dominating the shipbuilding market and building 200 times more than them. Because this represents a national security issue, and in case of tension, of course, the Americans could not react. And so the question is also, we are among like-minded partners, so what are we doing to basically make sure that we also have this capacity to deal with the US-China tensions that are going to heat up with tariffs, with restrictions on the shipbuilding industry?
Thanks a lot. Just to check whether there is any other questions. No. So yes, one quickly, and then that's it, and we will go to the answers.
So there was a question just earlier about transportation efficiency. So I just, as a manufacturer and a businessman, we manufacture robotic systems. We export it to Europe, US. So it takes us about 30 to 45 days to export a component from India to Europe, whereas a Chinese producer could ship it in like 15 to 20 days. Their systems are so efficient that sometimes when we get parts from Pune to Chennai, it takes us 20 to 25 days, where Chinese parts arrive in 10 to 15 days. So that's the kind of efficiency we are competing against. And they have state funding to enable this. So my question is specifically to Mr. Sanyal, are we putting Indian capital behind shipping lanes so that we can make transportation efficiency better? And multimodal transport is fundamentally inefficient. So are we making shipping lanes that can make this faster?
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Stefanos, I'll start with you and the threat of Chinese presence or significant Chinese presence in the ownership of European ports.
Yeah, well, as you may know, the Piraeus port is run by COSCO, which is a Chinese company. And not only that, we have with China cooperation. I mean, the Greek ship owners, they build ships in the China shipyards. Right now, as we speak, 300 ships owned by Greeks are being built in China, and around 160 in Korea, as we speak. So we have this relationship, okay? This is a fact. We try to be a win-win situation. Because, as a maritime nation, we have the largest fleet in the world in terms of deadweight. 25% of the global trade run by Greek ships. So, we try to benefit from the cooperation with China, cooperation with Korea, and, of course, with India. For us, it's strategic, let's say, we want to improve, to enhance our relationship with India, and again, to explore, as I said before, new corridors, and IMEC is number one. Now, relating to, US-China trade wars, this influenced the whole maritime sector, we follow carefully what the European Union decisions are, and also the World Trade Organization, and of course the IMO. So this European Union, World Trade Organization, and IMO, defines our standpoint to all this.
Hopefully, because the international law has been trapped upon very often recently. Sanjeev, please. And then I will ask colleagues if anybody else wants to say something.
So I wanted to answer firstly the question on smart ports. Absolutely agree. Ships are the cheapest way to move things around by some margin. So it has to be a port, and we are indeed building a massive new port in Vadhavan, which will have a capacity bigger than all our current ports put together. And we're looking at building a similar port on the other coast as well. So yes. But going to the question about shipbuilding, which was there earlier, we absolutely want the shipbuilding industry to grow in India. As already mentioned, 60% of all ships are now being built in China. And of the 20% in Korea and another 25% in Japan, much of that is going to move to China as well, because in the end, shipbuilding is basically about millions of hours of welding. It's a young man's business. The demographics in both China and Korea and Japan will not support this for more than another maximum 5 to 8 years, after which it'll be impossible to do it. So it'll all go to China. Eventually, they too will have an aging problem. But on the other hand, India has many advantages. We have a long coastline. We have our own demand. We are able to design aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines. We can certainly design tankers. We have the young men. We have the steel. So we have all the ingredients. We just, for some reason, aren't actually making ships. So last 18 months, you may have seen, we have done a lot of changes. All our maritime laws have got changed. We are in the Indian government has just announced 2 weeks ago that it will order 112 big ships, tankers and container ships. Much of this hopefully will give to Indian shipbuilders. We have begun to reopen some of these, like in Pipavav and so on. There were these closed dry docks. We have opened them up and giving them orders. So there's a massive effort being put into India into shipbuilding. And frankly, our partners such as the US and Australia will very quickly discover that shipbuilding is something that is simply not going to be economically viable in those countries. So even if they want to rebuild their navy, it's probably cheaper for them to give us the shell to build, and then they can put their missiles or whatever they want. But actually physically building the shells of these ships is something perhaps in the ecosystem we are talking about only India can do. In fact, I don't know if you're aware, the Americans are actually pulling out of the AUKUS deal to Australia because they're simply not able to build enough submarines for themselves. So this is an offer, let me say, that India can make to the world, that we can build your ships.
Thanks a lot. I need to close the panel, otherwise I'll be in trouble. Thanks a lot. I hope we gave you a taste of what actually needs to happen for all this big geopolitical talk to have effect on everyday life in our countries. Thanks a lot to my panelists. Thanks a lot to the audience. And thanks a lot to the organizers.